There was a tremendous hissing sound, and the pigskin glowed red, white, then purest golden. Then, incredibly, it was no longer a pigskin, but a living golden boar that began to walk around the forge, sniffing at the air. Sindri clapped his hands and laughed, shouting delightedly, "Wonderful! Marvellous! Just what we wanted! Isn't he beautiful? The gods will love him, won't they? We'll call him Golinbasti. That's a good name, isn't it?" To make the second magical treasure, Sindri took a special oven and placed it in the hottest part of the forge and began spinning it round and round, singing, "Gold that melts, gold that spins, gold that forms 8 golden rings, flows and glows and shines and wins. Do it now as Sindri sings." Brok, meanwhile, pumped on the bellows for all he was worth, knowing that the temperature had to be kept high at this crucial stage. But the vicious gadfly had returned and stung him right on the cheek. He shook his shaggy, oversized dwarf's head, but could not release his grip on the handle of the bellows to swat the evil insect, because the magic would be spoiled, and he had to grit his teeth as the wicked stinger dug into his face, and blood trickled down over his grey, bearded chin. Eventually, just before the oven stopped spinning, the gadfly ceased tormenting Brok and flew away into the darkness of the cave. Sindri removed the special oven from the forge and took out a beautiful golden ring, which he named Draupnir, the gold dropper. For every 9 days, 8 more identical golden rings would drop from it. For the final treasure, Sindri brought iron to make a war hammer, dropping it into a special cast and telling Brok to keep the heat as high as possible. While the long-suffering Brok pumped away on the bellows, the gadfly, which was really the god of mischief Loki, trying to sabotage the dwarf's efforts in order to keep his head on his shoulders, reappeared, and this time stung the unfortunate Brok right in the eye. Determined and stubborn though Brok was, the pain was more than he could stand, and for a couple of vital seconds he dropped the handle of the bellows to swat away the tormenting insect. Sindri quickly ran to the forge and, taking a pair of large iron tongs, removed the war-hammer, casting his expert eye over it as he tutted and shook his head and muttered, "It looks like no harm was done except for the handle. It's shorter than it ought to be. No, but what's done is done. We were lucky there, brother. We could have had a disaster on our hands." As he finished speaking, Loki stepped out of the shadows, smirking, and said to Brok, "Well, all finished, are we? My, Brok, that eye looks nasty. What happened? Did something sting you? I'd get that seen to if I were you. Fine, all right then, let's get going, shall we? It's a fair trot to Asgard." So, gathering up their treasures, Loki and the 2 dwarf brothers set off for Asgard to have their work judged by the gods. When they reached Asgard, all the gods assembled in the great hall of Valhalla to have a good look at what they brought. Loki offered his gifts first, handing over the spear Gungnir to Odin, the golden hair to Thor, and the enchanted ship Skidblade to Frey. The god seemed well pleased with what he had brought them, and he felt confident that he would keep his head. But then Brok began to hand over what he and his brother had made, explaining the secrets of each gift to each god in turn. He gave Odin the ring Draupnir, which assured its owner of eternal wealth, and to Frey he gave the golden boar Golinbasti, pointing out that it could transport a rider over earth, sea, or sky by day or night faster than any normal steed, and moreover, by night its golden glow would illuminate the way for its rider. The final gift was the short-handled hammer, which he presented to Thor, saying, "O great Thor, I give you a weapon worthy of the god of thunder, the hammer Mjolnir. Mjolnir cannot be broken and will shatter anything you choose to hit, and after it strikes its target, it will return flying to your hand. One last thing. It has such a short handle that you can carry it inside your shirt if you wish. should you ever need to conceal it. Loki was furious that the crafty dwarf had made a virtue out of the little defect he had caused in the enchanted weapon, and began to get nervous about what the god's decision might be. Finally, after much comparing and consulting, Odin announced his decision, declaring the hammer Mjolnir to be the most useful gift, and the ideal weapon for Thor to use in his battles with the giants, and he confirmed that the dwarves had won the bet. Loki protested furiously, but to no avail, and then offered to pay a forfeit. But Brok was adamant that only the head of the trickster would satisfy the terms of the wager, and the god of mischief, panicked, grabbed a pair of winged sandals he kept handy for emergencies, and sped off, running over land and sea to escape his doom. But Thor, who was still angry with Loki and indebted to the dwarves for his new hammer, chased after him and caught him in a trice, bundling him into a net so that he would not be able to escape again, and then brought him back to face the grim-faced Brok and Sindri. As Brok took a huge, sharp battle-axe and came towards Loki to chop his head off, Sindri made him kneel on the big wooden chopping block where the gods cut their firewood. In a last desperate attempt to save his neck, the screaming Loki invoked his blood oath with Odin, and protested that since the wager had only referred to his head, the dwarves could only take it if they could do so without harming his neck, which was not part of the bet. Even though the gods felt Loki's argument to be somewhat twisted, because of his oath of blood with Odin, they decided to back him up, and insisted that if Brok wanted to take Loki's head, he must do so without hurting his neck. Brok and Sindri realized they were being cheated, but Brok in particular, still smarting from the sting of the gadfly, was determined that if he could not have the mischievous one's head, he would at least still his wagging tongue before returning to Svartalfheim. Sindri gave him a long strand of leather like a bootlace and his magical needle, and Brok stitched the god of mischief's lips together, much to the amusement of the other gods, Thor in particular. It took Loki months to unpick the leather strand from the holes in his lips, and for a long time after that he was unable to talk because his lips hurt so much, which kept everyone happy for as long as it lasted.